History does not remember only victories. Sometimes the strongest lessons are hidden inside defeat. The Ottoman Empire, a power that stretched across 3 continents, shaping the fate of cities, kingdoms, and entire regions for centuries. Sultans and generals had their names written in gold, but beneath that gold lay another color: blood and loss. Every expanding border, every raised banner of triumph also meant thousands of lives ending somewhere else. This video is not about glory. This video is about the moments history books often pass over quickly, but soldiers and nations never forgot. There were battles that broke rulers, changed the direction of an empire, turned cities into ruins, left families without fathers and sons, and sometimes ended the myth of invincibility. A captured sultan at Ankara, endless waves of assault before the walls of Vienna, a kingdom erased in a single day on the plains of Mohacs, soldiers starving and freezing during the defense of Plevna, a fleet burning in the red waters of Navarino. On the battlefield, it was not only cannons and swords speaking. Their plans collapsed. Mistakes were unforgiven. One decision changed thousands of destinies. Every commander marched out dreaming of victory, but some never returned. Others did return, yet not as the same men. These battles did not only shape Ottoman history, they reshaped Europe, the Balkans, and the Middle East. One burned city, one destroyed bridge, sometimes changed the entire map of a region. And in these stories, there are not only sultans and pashas. There are also unnamed soldiers, mothers waiting at the door, children dying in blockaded cities, families losing everything. History often speaks in numbers. Tens of thousands died. The army was destroyed. The city fell. But every number was a person, with dreams, with a name, with no statue to be remembered by. Now we will look together at the most tragic and devastating battles of the Ottoman era. These were not just military events. They were moments that tested the strength of an empire. In some, armies collapsed. In others, thrones changed. And in a few, history itself seemed to turn in a different direction. Let us begin with the first battle, the one that changed destinies. Europe was holding its breath. On one side stood the Ottoman Empire, stretching across 3 continents, confident, experienced, and used to victory. On the other side stood Vienna, a heavily fortified city, the gateway to Central Europe. If Vienna fell, the road to the heart of Europe would be wide open. The Ottoman army, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, marched toward the city with one of the largest forces the empire had ever gathered. Tens of thousands of soldiers, cannons, and supplies moved like a vast wave across the plains. Their goal was clear: take Vienna, break European resistance, expand the empire further west. The siege begins. In July 1683, the city was surrounded. The Viennese defenders withdrew behind thick stone walls. Civilians were trapped inside. There was no escape. Ottoman engineers and miners began digging tunnels beneath the walls to plant explosives. Cannons thundered day and night. Houses collapsed. Food dwindled. Disease spread. Inside Vienna, fear and hunger became daily companions. Outside the walls, the Ottoman camp looked like a moving city. Tents stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with soldiers from across the empire. Turks, Tatars, Balkan auxiliaries, and more. Yet days turned into weeks, and the city still stood. The mistake. Kara Mustafa Pasha had a dream. He didn't want Vienna destroyed. He wanted it captured intact as a shining jewel for the empire. So instead of launching full, brutal assaults, he waited. He tightened the siege. He pressured the defenders slowly. This decision would change history, because while he waited, help was coming. The relief army. To the east of the city, a massive allied army gathered. German states, Austrians, and most famously, the Polish army led by King Jan Sobieski. They marched toward Vienna to break the siege. On September 12, 1683, they arrived. From the hills overlooking the Ottoman camp, they watched the battlefield below. The Ottomans were powerful, but spread thin from weeks of siege. The battle began at dawn. The final charge hours of brutal fighting followed. Then came one of the largest cavalry charges in history, over 18,000 horsemen, including the famous Polish winged hussars with feathers mounted on their backs, charged downhill directly at the Ottoman lines. The ground shook, the Ottoman army broke. Chaos spread through the camp. Tents were abandoned, siege machines left behind. The dream of taking Vienna collapsed in a single day. Kara Mustafa Pasha retreated. The siege was over. Aftermath. For the Ottomans, this was not just a lost battle. It was a turning point. The empire would never again push so deep into Central Europe. For Europe, it was a symbolic victory. Church bells rang, sermons declared salvation, myths and legends were born. For the soldiers, however, it was mud, blood, hunger, and death, with no hero's music playing in the background. History remembers the fall of cities and the rise of empires. But Vienna 1683 reminds us of something else. Empires do not fall in a single night. They turn slowly, moment by moment, decision by decision. And on that September day, history turned at the gates of Vienna. On the wide, flat plains near the town of Mohacs, two worlds faced each other. On one side stood the Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, young, ambitious, and already experienced in war. His army was massive, organized, and supported by powerful artillery and elite janissaries. On the other side stood the Kingdom of Hungary, ruled by King Louis II, only 20 years old, brave, but leading a divided and exhausted country. Hungary had been weakened by internal struggles and lacked strong allies. Yet the Hungarians knew one thing. If Mohacs was lost, the kingdom itself could fall. The calm before the storm. The Hungarian nobles argued over strategy. Some urged caution, demanding they wait for reinforcements. Others pushed for an immediate battle. In the end, they marched. The Hungarian army took position on the open plain, a dangerous place for a smaller force facing Ottoman artillery. But by then, it was too late to turn back. The Ottomans advanced like a dark tide across the horizon. Cannons were lined, janissaries took formation. The vast camp behind them showed just how large the invading army truly was. The battle began. The first clash. The Hungarians struck first. Their heavy cavalry charged forward with incredible speed and bravery, breaking through the Ottoman front lines. For a brief moment, it looked as if they might succeed, but this was exactly what the Ottomans had planned. The charge was drawn deeper into a trap, toward hidden positions and concentrated artillery. Ottoman guns roared. The cavalry was shattered by cannon fire. The battlefield turned into chaos. Horses screamed. Armor cracked. Men disappeared into smoke. Collapse. The rest of the Hungarian army attempted to follow, but the ground was uneven and the formations broke. The Ottomans counterattacked from both sides. The plain became a killing field. The Hungarian line collapsed. King Louis II tried to escape the battlefield. His horse stumbled in a marsh. The young king drowned under the weight of his armor, not slain by a sword, but swallowed by the mud. In just a few hours, it was over. A kingdom lost in one day. What happened at Mohacs was not just a defeat, it was a national disaster. The Hungarian nobility was devastated. Many of its leading lords and bishops were killed. The kingdom fractured. Within years, Hungary would be divided into three parts. Lands controlled by the Ottomans, lands ruled by the Habsburgs, and the semi-independent Transylvania for Suleiman. It was one of his greatest victories. For Hungary, it became a symbol of tragedy, remembered in a single sentence. The Mohacs catastrophe. Legacy Mohacs teaches something about history that numbers cannot show. Battles are not only lines on maps, they are moments where the fate of nations changes forever. A young king, a misjudged battlefield, a single afternoon of fighting, and a kingdom that would never be the same again. The plains of Mohacs are quiet today. Grass covers the ground where thousands fell, but the silence still carries a message. Empires rise and fall, and sometimes, a nation's destiny can truly change in one day. On the dry plains near Ankara, under a burning Anatolian sun, two of the most powerful rulers of their age faced each other. On one side stood Sultan Bayezid I, known as Bayezid the Thunderbolt. Fast in battle, fearless in decision, the man who had expanded the Ottoman state with incredible speed. On the other side stood Timur, or Tamerlane, the conqueror from Central Asia, a brilliant and ruthless warlord who had already crushed kingdoms from Persia to India. Both men believed they could not be defeated. Only one would be right. The road to conflict. The clash was not only about territory, it was about pride, prestige, and power. Timur accused Bayezid of sheltering his rivals. Bayezid accused Timur of invading lands promised to the Ottomans. Letters filled with insults were exchanged. Words failed. Armies moved. Bayezid marched his forces to confront Timur near Ankara, far from his own supply centers, across a landscape suffering from heat and drought. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. Two armies, two worlds. The Ottoman army was strong, elite janissaries, powerful cavalry soldiers from Rumelia and Anatolia, vassal princes and beyliks. But it was tired and thirsty. Timur's army was different, huge, fresh, and supported by something the Ottomans did not have. Thousands of steppe horse archers and war elephants brought from India. Even more dangerous, many Anatolian beyliks on Bayezid's side secretly favored Timur and were waiting for the right moment to change loyalty. The battle begins. The heat was unbearable. Dust rose into the sky, turning day into a red haze. Timur's archers rode in circles, raining arrows. The elephants pushed forward, frightening horses unused to such beasts. The Ottomans fought bravely. Bayezid himself led charges, refusing to retreat. But as the day went on, disaster unfolded. Some of Bayezid's Anatolian troops defected to Timur during the battle. Others simply fled. The Ottoman lines began to break. The janissaries formed a defensive square and fought until their ammunition ran out. Surrounded, they were cut down where they stood. The fall of the thunderbolt. Bayezid refused to abandon the field. He fought until his horse collapsed. He tried to gather the shattered remains of his army, but Timur's forces surrounded him. The thunderbolt of the Ottomans was captured. For Timur, it was the ultimate triumph. For the Ottomans, it was the beginning of chaos. Aftermath. The interregnum. Bayezid died in captivity months later. His sons began to fight each other for the throne. This period is remembered as the Ottoman interregnum, a time of civil war, division, and uncertainty. For the first time, the Ottoman state seemed likely to collapse. Villages burned, cities changed hands, brothers became enemies. It would take more than a decade, in the rise of Mehmed I, to reunite the empire. Legacy. The Battle of Ankara is remembered not only as a defeat, but as a warning. An empire can expand at lightning speed, but one mistake, one miscalculation, one day under a burning sun can break even the strongest. Two conquerors met on the plains of Anatolia. Only one rode away victorious, and the echoes of that day shaped the destiny of the Ottoman Empire for generations to come. Near the Black Sea coast, beside the city of Varna, two armies faced each other in a moment that would decide the future of Eastern Europe. On one side stood the Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Murad II, an experienced commander who had even tried to retire from the throne, but returned when war became inevitable. On the other side stood a crusader army made up of Hungarians, Poles, Wallachians, Croats, and other European forces, led by King Władysław III of Poland and Hungary and the famous general John Hunyadi. The Crusaders had sworn a holy oath to stop Ottoman expansion, but Varna would become their grave. The broken peace before the battle. There had been peace. Murad II and the Christian leaders signed a treaty. Yet in Europe, voices cried for one more crusade, a final push to drive back the Ottomans. The treaty was broken. Murad returned to command, not willingly, but determined. It is said he carried the treaty into battle and declared, "If oaths mean nothing, then let the sword decide." The battlefield. The Crusader army was smaller. They positioned themselves with the Black Sea to their back and swamps on both sides. No retreat, no escape. It was a risky but bold formation meant to block Ottoman maneuvering. The Ottomans surrounded them in a crescent formation. Janissaries formed the discipline center. Anatolian and Rumelian cavalry spread across the wings. The air filled with drums and war cries. The battle began. Clash of armies. Hunyadi, led powerful attacks against the Ottoman flanks. At first, parts of the Ottoman line wavered. Then came the decision that changed everything. The young king, Władysław III, only 20 years old, saw an opportunity. Instead of holding formation, he charged straight at the Janissaries in the center, hoping to kill Murad and end the battle instantly. It was courage. It was also a fatal mistake. The Janissaries opened their ranks, surrounded the king's cavalry, and cut them down. The king's horse fell. He was killed in the chaos of blades and shields. His head was raised on a spear. The Crusader army broke. Collapse and aftermath. With their king dead and their formation shattered, the Crusader forces fled toward the sea and marshes, where many drowned or were cut down. The Crusade of Varna had ended, not in glory, but in silence and smoke. For the Ottomans, Varna was more than a victory. It was proof that the empire could not easily be pushed back. Within less than a decade, Mehmed II, the son of Murad, would capture Constantinople, and the road to that moment passed through Varna. For Europe, Varna became a symbol, a crusade lost, a king fallen, a chance that never returned. Today, the fields around Varna are quiet, but beneath the soil lie the echoes of that November day. A reminder that battles are not just fought with swords, but with decisions, pride, faith, and fate. And sometimes one charge can change history forever. In the Balkan hills around Plevna, snow began to fall, and with it, one of the most desperate defenses in Ottoman history began. The Russian Empire, supported by Romanian troops, pushed south with one goal: break through to Istanbul. Standing in their path was one man, Osman Pasha, and the soldiers under his command. They were outnumbered, they were surrounded, but they were not ready to surrender. The fortress of trenches. Instead of waiting in the city, Osman Pasha did something unexpected. He turned the hills into rings of earth and fire. Trenches, barricades, hidden artillery. When the Russians attacked, they did not find an easy victory. They found a fortress dug into the land itself. Assault after assault crashed against the Ottoman lines. Russian troops advanced uphill through mud and snow. Ottoman rifles and cannons answered from the trenches. The fields around Plevna turned to smoke and iron. 3 major assaults failed. Europe watched in shock. An outnumbered army was stopping a giant. Hunger and winter. But heroism has a price. As weeks turned to months, supplies disappeared. Food ran out. Ammunition thinned. Wounded men lay in freezing trenches. Winter became their second enemy. Still, no surrender. The final breakout. On a dark December night, Osman Pasha made his last decision. He would break the siege himself. He mounted his horse, sword raised, and led a desperate attack into the Russian lines. For a moment it worked. The line wavered. Then he was wounded. His horse fell. The breakout failed. Osman Pasha was captured, but even his enemies saluted him. The Russians are said to have stood in respect as he was carried past them. Legacy Plevna did not save the war for the Ottomans, but it changed how the world saw them. It became the story of soldiers who fought surrounded, starving, frozen, yet refused to break. A defense not measured only in victory or defeat, but in endurance, loyalty, and courage. Today, the hills of Plevna are quiet, but beneath the snow lies a memory. Sometimes history remembers not only those who win, but those who refuse to give up.